Today we will be examining the principle of emphasis in art, or the artist's ability to draw attention and get you to focus on the important part of a work. If you are making an artwork, or maybe even just designing a room layout or any other means of visual communication, and you're constantly getting feedback about an area that you don't want people to focus on, it may be that you need to place more emphasis or guide people to the correct area using directional forces. Alternately, artists, architects, and designers can downplay parts of their work through subordination. Subordination is the minimizing or toning down of compositional elements so that the focal point can then stand out more. Consider when you're going to a sports arena and how different entrances will either be emphasized or subordinated depending on where the general public is expected to go. The main entrance is very easy to find. It's proportionally big. There are lights, posters, or banners around. There's often music or an announcer over the speaker in the entrance. And many of the doors will even open up automatically as you pass by them. Service entrances, on the other hand, are meant to blend in. They don't give you a good view into the interior. Their openings are smaller and painted to blend in with the walls. They may even be locked. And oftentimes you may pass several service entrances on a building without even realizing that you've seen one. Now, the most important part of the work, the one that the artist is using the elements of art at their disposal to draw their eye towards, is called the focal point. Generally speaking, if it's the first thing that you notice when you're looking at a painting, that's because it's the thing that has been the most emphasized and is, generally speaking, considered to be its focal point. So let's look at some ways in which artists create emphasis. You may have artists who create emphasis through values, a contrast in values like we have seen with chiaroscuro throughout this course, allows the backgrounds of artworks to fade away, while the very bright values that are concentrated on the figures draw your eye towards them. You may find that emphasis can be created through the use of color. Consider the film Schindler's List, a film that is shot entirely in black and white with one single exception. Throughout the course of the film, there is a young girl in a red jacket. And while this girl does not speak a line, and in any other circumstance wherein color was not specifically being used, she would probably fade into the background. But because color, and especially the color red, is being used so effectively here, we follow her story throughout the film as a symbol for the plight of the Jewish people. Emphasis can be created through placement or using the element of space and orders of perspective. Renaissance drawings are very easy to tell what is the most important thing because they have a very rational approach to placing objects of importance. Generally speaking, that means that the object in the very smack center of the painting is usually the most important. You may also see, especially in paintings that use perspective and vanishing points and horizon lines, that the vanishing point, especially when there's only one, is generally speaking going to be behind the most important object in your painting. So if it looks like all the lines of a building are converging towards one person or object, take a little bit of extra time to see what the artist is guiding your eyes towards. We have seen many ways in which artists have created emphasis through scale in our class. Consider medieval paintings where the Madonna or the Christ child are often much larger than any other figures in the work. Also remember how in ancient Egypt, the pharaohs or gods or other important figures, the larger that they were, the more they were being emphasized and the more important and attention was focused on them. Emphasis can be created through implied lines, which often coincide with your directional forces. Remember how we explored the power of implied line at the beginning of our lectures, and how those connections are meant to draw our eyes towards important parts of the painting. And further on down the line, emphasis can really be created through any kind of contrast, whether it is objects that are repeated in some areas that aren't repeated in other areas, whether it's busy patterns being contrasted with flattened patterns, whether it's areas of high texture versus areas of a different contrasting texture. However that contrast is manifested will draw your eyes to different areas. Now I want you to follow the link to this video on a designer who stages houses that are going to sell for millions of dollars in New York City. And think about how she is communicating with you visually, how she is using elements and principles of art that she talks about directly to tell a story for people, to get them to focus on certain features of the apartment, to get them to forget about other features. So how is this designer using any elements or principles of art, but especially the principle of emphasis, to create and construct an experience that is meant to make you feel a certain way? So how is this artist constructing a very specific experience for you? And then when you come back, you have an opportunity to look at this particular staging of a room and just give me a whole range here of how has the designer used multiple elements and principles to create emphasis on the focal point of this room. So identify that focal point and then explain to me how she is drawing your eye towards it.